have to do this, we have to do that, we have to do this, and I'm chair of it. And I said, hold on, wait a minute. What would success look like? And, I've got, one of the rabbis sitting there also, and it's like, oh. And we started pulling out what would success look like and for whom. We had to back up to the for whoms.
Of course.
And then and then I said, and then there was silence, and I said, and what else? And then after more silence, I said, that wasn't because I think that there is a what else, but I'm going to keep on saying that until there is silence. So let's go on to the conditions. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, we said that we wanted to have, make sure that the people felt like they were engaged. Great. What conditions have to be in place for that to happen? Mm-hmm. And, they did start getting a little bit into the weeds at that point, but they said, well, what would create that? And they got it. They, there was, what are the conditions? And, well, we need to make sure they have an opportunity to talk with each other. Great. How are we going to do that? So it was kind of a leading from the middle type thing, because I'm a chair of a committee, not the whole thing. But 70-minute meeting, including the getting to know yourself part. And I was disappointed. They were disappointed because I had promised them a 60-minute meeting.
Wow.
I said, well, next time we don't have to introduce ourselves to each other. We can, and talk about the process. So anyway, that was awesome.
That is awesome.
And what's more awesome is because they've done that introduction, everything else goes faster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, but also, as a side note, is I explained what we did. I was explicit about why we were doing it, and that this is to create the path. And so the rabbi who was sitting there with me, Elisa, was saying, that's really interesting. I'm going to have to use that.
Mission accomplished. We can all go home.
Well, we'll see. I think she's going to need a little bit more, reminders.
Yes.
I know this person. Yes.
Well, just like we all need practice.
It's a practice. It's not a perfect. Yes.
I had heard that.
I'm not sure where.
Oh, how awesome. Yeah.
So that was cool.
Very, very, very cool. And Miss Trey, what's going on with you?
Oh boy, lots this week.
Good.
Culminating in, well, not even culminating, but today I had a conversation with Dan Oler, who represents ESOP Builders. ESOP is Employee Share Ownership Plan. Mm-hmm. And with Seth Leon, who's representative for Alberta Community and Cooperatives Association here in Alberta. And it was a conversation on this Zoom platform, which they found incredibly exciting, and just moving the conversation forward, talking about playing together in the sandbox and what that could look like, and what the possibilities are, and who we need to get into the conversation further, and setting up a second meeting. And
great.
Yeah, it's just about being present and being in the conversation and letting the data lead you. And they just commented about it kind of being a breath of fresh air, that I wasn't going in with a preconceived agenda of what had to happen, but just asking, laying a bit of the vision, but not enough to sort of dictate the flow, just enough to give them something to sink their teeth into to get the ball rolling, and then going from there. And so now they're going back to their respective counterparts that they are accountable to, and it's going to be interesting to see who shows up on conversation number 4 or 5 or whatever it is it's going to be next. So yeah, really just feeling, it's kind of like watching a flower unfold. you know, just watching one petal at a time just kind of pop open and just go, ooh, look at that. Ooh, look at that.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it is
great.
awesome. It is. And the whole week has been like that. That's just it's not a culmination, but it's a representation of sort of how the whole week has gone. So
That's great.
yeah.
Cool.
That's great.
Yay for you. Yay for all of us.
And, oh, it's backwards. Anyway, I just had lunch with Sheila Bravo
Please.
talking about the conference and helping her figure out what her outcomes, what she wants and what conditions and whatever. So that was also an awesome.
Oh,
She is so using the catalytic framework language. It's incredible that how she just absorbed it. For those of you who don't know, Sheila Bravo is the executive director of the Delaware Alliance for Nonprofit Advancement. She has been reading anything and everything that she can find that Hildy has ever written. And,
oh, another one.
yeah. Well, or that, you know, everything about the catalytic framework, she is using the language, she continuum of potential, setting the conditions. I mean, it's been such a joy to find this kindred spirit here in Delaware. It really has been.
yeah. And Trey, instead of her banging on the door until we finally said, okay, come in, she basically sent a ticket and I went there. So yeah, you are very, your recognition of that is well deserved.
Very, very fortunate.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely. And that is when I was posting stuff on Facebook from being in the storm in Delaware. That's that. I mean, your determination and hers, yeah, was flying back to avoid the storm, flying out right after the storm, and we all holed up at the DoubleTree. Everybody, Susan, who lives only 20 minutes away, everybody was put up at the DoubleTree so that we were sure everybody could get there. And
Wow.
And it was actually the perfect weekend for there to have been a storm if we had to have it, because we were going to be there for 2 straight days anyway.
Yeah, you weren't losing in lovely days to be outdoors.
And by the time I got home, the snow was shoveled, which was wonderful.
magic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's an awesome. So what is awesome with my colleagues here?
You want to go first? Okay. My awesome happened 2 hours ago, and it's totally relevant to this meeting. It was the debrief and reflections from the instructors of the 101 in terms of building the class. And the things that came out of that, which will totally inform what you guys are doing, and how this shit works, and how we are using the framework to really go places you would not have thought possible to go. And so to me, that was totally awesome.
Can you give us an example?
I will let others give the examples.
You don't want to brag?
I don't want to brag.
Okay, then I'll brag on you. What we were doing was we were finishing up the debrief. We had gone from the very, very first encounter with people to basically the timeline that we brought you guys along when we talked about the class. We were debriefing using that, and so we got to the evaluation part, and we're sort of going back and forth about what evaluation makes possible, what we had been thinking about before, and blah 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 blah. And we kept using the word that it's using the kinds of reflections that we had done during the class and blah blah blah. And Dimitri finally looked up and said, "You know, reflection feels a lot more appropriate and comfortable than evaluation." Feels more us. And it was just, we have vowed never to use the word evaluation again. It just, you could watch all 5 of us just went. It was just this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing of you know, we are so in the habit of reflecting, and the whole cycle of learn, practice, reflect, practice, learn, practice, reflect, and it's just more reflection. And so that was awesome. It was as awesome as the meeting I think you were in, Jane. I'm not sure if you were in, Trey, when Bill Music said, you know, qualifying people doesn't feel like us, and preparing people feels like it was that same, oh yeah, this feels really good.
And that's not to mention the awesome of being here.
Yeah.
It's just totally awesome.
So that was, yeah, that was.
I mean, it was great, and I just thought it's perfect for this.
Yeah.
Be,
oh, absolutely.
You know, because it really does inform what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And you? Yes.
I was telling Trey before you guys joined us about the Shape My City committee that I went to that's trying to figure out how to pull together all the ideas and initiatives for making Toronto amazing. And it turned out that they had taken the same approach as we did with faculty. They said, we had so many amazing applications to join this committee. We don't even know what the committee's for yet. We don't know what it's going to do. There's no way we could turn people down. We invited everybody. So who are you going to say, I'm sorry, you're not amazing enough to be part of talk about how to make the city amazing?
You're only amazing here. We want amazing, yeah.
So it is spreading so nicely.
Oh, it
is. It really is.
You know, there's an app for that.
Of judging how amazing somebody is.
A NAP, like that NAP, or
Yeah, there we go. I could take one of those.
Yeah, that one. I also took a 4.5-hour course on video presenting for business.
How was that? You mentioned you were going to. How was that?
He's really, really good. And he took half a dozen people most of whom had never made a video, and kept saying, I don't know how to explain what I do. I don't know how to. And all of them made amazing short videos by the end of the class, and understood
4 hours.
Wade went from, you know, I'm so-and-so and I do this, to having really good stories and hooks to start off, and really tight videos that people would watch to the end.
We'll talk.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this something that he does online? Is this something?
I have not heard of him doing it online.
Oh,
I can certainly ask.
Yeah, because that would be something fabulous.
Does he know how to use video? I mean, could he
Yes, and he can be hired to make videos too, and I might for a longer one. But I immediately not only used it for a welcome video for this class that I'm now frantically trying to get ready for, I decided to use the same hook story opener for a 90-minute presentation I'm doing in person on Saturday to a board of directors. I could actually get them listening from the start.
Yeah, let's you and I, if you could share his info with me and make an introduction. I think it would be awesome to be able to offer that to our fellows overall, and see if we could do something with him where we could help.
It would really fit the storytelling.
That would be, yeah, if you will make an introduction to the two of us, that would be really wonderful.
If I don't write it down, it won't.
Yeah, I know that one. I send myself emails all the time. I'm on a walk and I'm on my phone sending myself emails.
Yep.
Will do.
Yeah.
Well, my awesome is that Hildy and Dimitri are here until the 14th, and what all that will make possible. And that my parents are here and they officially closed on their home in Idaho. So
Nice.
last night they slept in their empty house that had their 2 beds delivered. So got to start, getting excited about what life will be like over here by their kids. So,
Where did they move from?
Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Wow. That's a difference.
Yeah.
And they found a doctor they like.
Yeah, and this morning, a friend, we had a conversation at our community hub about what systems would need to be in place so doctors can show up in your appointments, not as doctors, but as fellow community members. And sure, they're going to spend time with you in their profession, but what would it take to have systems that support them getting to know you, you getting to know them, and not then running to the coder biller who has to decide how every minute of your conversation went so they could bill for all these different things. So after that, a friend shared a blog post from a local doctor who has completely left the system because she was spending all of her time with the coders and billers and has no insurance. She's not part of anything. It's her own private practice, and you pay some kind of I don't know, whatever the rate is that you pay per month, but kind of have access to
concierge medicine.
So, but it's
in essence.
And it's from an affordable standpoint. So it's not only for those very well-heeled people.
Yeah.
A new medical thing is of such importance to my parents with their health conditions. So I just got a text that they each had a 1-hour meeting with her this morning. My mother used the words love, as in, we love this doctor, you know, like, so I'm feeling really happy for them. And it's, again, from sharing stories about what good looks like and, you know, create the systems that support. And this lady had put this beautiful blog together about her decision. And now she spends all of her time not learning new coding and billing, but learning about the different models from other people around the world and how they're giving the delivery care that, and how they can give access to pharmaceutical drugs that's not the exorbitant prices. And it's a big concern for our whole family. And just to get that text.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That is awesome.
Really is.
And to all of you immersion veterans, we're going to be having dinner tonight with Rebecca's family. Her family name is Smacky, and her note in the calendar was, we're having a Smacky immersion tonight. So,
and I think, Susan, it will be like drinking from a fire hose.
That's my legacy, that phrase, I guess.
It is a good one. I have one more that I think that you guys will appreciate, and then let's dive in. And that is that I found in Tucson a co-working space specifically for writers, and I plunked my money down and joined up, and I will be starting when I get home having a place where I can write, so that many of the pieces that all of you have wanted, like a book on catalytic thinking so that we can hand it to somebody,
Yes.
Or actually writing something, anything, anywhere on the continuum of potential so that we could tell somebody about it, except it's this top secret thing because nobody's written about it. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to have a dedicated space, co-working space for writers, which is just, yeah.
Great. Awesome.
It's really funny. Somebody, I don't remember who it was, had said, so what's the difference between that and just a co-working space? And it was so funny because at any time I've said that to a writer, they all say the same thing. It's quiet. It's like there's only one answer. It's quiet. So yeah, very cool. Very, very cool. Alrighty. Today, we will be focusing on the conditions that it will take to create the awesomeness that we talked about last time. A couple things that I wanted to go over first. Did you guys, by any chance, see the blog post that I did that lined that out?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Trey's got the oh my god look. So
No, I'm good. I'm
you
good.
found it? Okay, good. Good. And I also had shared with you guys a tentative calendar of sort of how the simultaneous teaching of the 101, development of the 102, and beginning the beta of the 102 can happen. And one of the things that became clear as I started to think about it is that we can begin the scheduling and pre-work process of this class that we're developing. While we're developing the back end of it, we can have people registering at the front end of it and starting to get ready and do the pre-reading, because we will have already talked about what we want the pre-reading process to be, and etc. We'll be in like designing, you know, session 5, and they will begin the pre-reading so that we can actually, my goal, and it is a my at this point, because I am really feeling very much like this is a transition year for me. Me stepping back from the teaching so that you guys can step forward into the teaching. And my goal is that by the end of this year, we have beta tested the 103 class that we haven't even started to think about, which is Catalytic Strategy. So that by January of 2017, somebody can actually be well on their way to understanding in a deep way those 3 classes. What it takes to bring out the best in people, what it takes to bring out the best in situations, what it takes to bring out the best in each other when we're dealing with stuff. So the fact that this looks aggressive is because it is.
It sure did look aggressive. Ambitious was more my
Ambitious, absolutely. But what it also does, and it's also been a huge goal of mine, and is one of the most exciting things that I think we have done yet so far as an organization, is that it immediately provides revenue opportunities for all of you. And for me, that's really, really important. So the opportunity to teach is an opportunity for you guys to have Creating the Future be a revenue source for you, which is awesome. To, you know, make a living, to, or at least augment your living by being this. It's like,
You mean so the cats can eat?
the cats can eat. It's an important thing.
yes.
An important thing indeed. So so let us dive in here and look at what we're going to talk about first, following the Catalytic Strategy, is what needs to be in place for the students, for them to be getting all this cool stuff that we said we wanted to aim them at. The fun part comes when we start looking at all of those conditions and saying, oh, wow, those are all learning objectives. And then how they all fit into the more traditional sense of learning objectives. So I'm going to pull up on another screen the blog post. Or actually, I've got my notes. We don't have to. We can focus on each other. So let's begin. And let me sort of line out questions, and I'm going to type them into the chat box. But just as a reminder, but really what we're looking at is what do people need in order for those high potential, how people could feel what they could achieve from being and learning catalytic listening. What would they, well, let's just do them slowly one at a time instead of plunking it into the chat box. We talked about results of people identifying strengths they don't know they have, feeling listened to, feeling heard, feeling alive and connected. We talked a lot about that energy that happens when we connect in that way. We talked about a reliable framework for people to effectively express their empathy and compassion. We talked about seeing the significance of each other. All of these as results we wanted to create, that people would feel honored and accepted, respected, lifted up, capable, that conversations can be life transforming for both the person asking and listening and the person being listened to. the power of noticing, and especially for us as instructors, the ability to continue and deepen our practice. And so as we're thinking about all of those things, what would our students need to know? What would they need to understand? What would they need to feel? If any of these resonate with you, just pick one. Feel. What would they need to believe? What would they need to be assured of? Let's start with what would our students need to be assured of in order for them to accomplish those results?
They would better understand everyone they're dealing with because they would have listened so much more effectively.
Wow. That's big.
They would need to believe that they are able to do this, that they have the ability to take on this process and be successful at it.
And that the whole, you can't fuck this up, and this shit works. So, like,
Yeah.
those that say that it
Well,
is.
every college is going to help ask you to write their man.
And if they did, yes, there you go. Yes, ma'am.
We need buttons.
Yeah.
We have an acronym.
An asterisk will do.
An asterisk will do. I love it.
So, what would it take for them to believe that they could do this?
They would need to reflect on successes they've had in making changes in themselves.
Opportunity to practice.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. If this is coming out of the practices, because if you ask them that up front, they've never had any successes in listening well.
Well, that's why I love.
I wasn't thinking of successes in listening. I was just thinking of successes in general, that they have been able to change themselves. We've all changed through our lives. So if they reflect on times when they have successfully changed something in their life, then it provides a boost to confidence that they can also take this on.
Yeah. It's what I loved about you adding that last part, because I had gone to the place Jane had gone, that where they've had success in listening. But I loved and I went to the same place you went, Jane, which was some may be able to and some may not have. But the fact that your focus was on making changes within themselves is and opportunities to practice in a safe environment. And I'm going to add practice a lot.
I have a thought coming, but I don't know where it fits. There's something about knowing that nothing happens without permission first. That there's this real sense that we're creating safe space and that there's power in that. And the power is within them as much as it is a part of the environment, that there's this sort of ebb and flow. And that if for whatever reason someone's in a place where they're feeling not quite there because they're having a bad day or whatever, that it's okay. That, there was this conversation that I was having with someone once, and we were talking about being involved with the group. And at that time, it was when we were doing conference call, right? There was no online. And the phrase that came out was, when you're having a bad day, you need the call, and when you're having a good day, the call needs you.
Oh, I like that.
And that's that no matter where you are, it's okay. Like, I guess that's where I'm going with it, is that there's power in that, in hearing where people are at, and coming from that place of responsiveness. I hope I'm making sense.
Oh no, you definitely are. It is the very, very serious reminder, which happened, I don't know, a dozen times in every one of the many sessions of that 101, that this is a practice, it's not a perfect. And that if this is about bringing out the best in each other, then in part, let me see what just happened to the camera here. Yeah. Something just got knocked.
Oh,
There you
yeah.
go.
Gotcha.
I know it. It was focused. I was trying to get it to focus on a human, not on the wall. Everybody got up and left. It's like, did I fart? I mean, it's do I smell? Did I like suddenly? The ongoing reminder, and it's one of the things that has shifted over time with what was immersion, in which no matter how much we were focused on a way of being and a way of thinking, at the time was still very, very much in the doing. And in doing, you're very afraid that you're not doing it right. And so I think part of what I'm babbling about is that what it takes is a safe place to explore the being and the thinking, which is what practice really is. Practice is first about what we notice, what we reflect on, and yeah, I'm really babbling, but it's very much making sense. What you're talking about, Trey, is the ongoing reminder that we're all practicing together, and that the instructors are practicing too, and that we're all practitioners together. And it's a practice, not a perfect, and it's not about doing it. Sometimes, and for sometimes a really long time, the most powerful steps we can take are to fuck up and notice we fucked up. And to not do it right, but to say, oh fuck, that person is responding in a really bad way. I did that, and I could do something different, and which is way different, which is a huge milestone from why are they being an asshole. And if any of that babbling made sense as a condition.
No, it's. I think that could be translated into, as you said before, that we are all practicing. We are all practitioners, and when the ostensible leader,
The instructor.
the ostensible instructor, admits to having screwed up, it normalizes what they're feeling. So that it's a process of normalization. And I would add, it's a slight kind of a half step off, like going from a C to a C plus here on the piano. There are people who need to watch success from more than one person, so that they can then imagine themselves doing it before they actually try it.
Yes.
And I'd say that was brought home to me last weekend, because the immersion class had us practicing a lot, but there wasn't as much watching it in practice. We were practicing, but we weren't watching it in practice. And so watching you do this, Hildy, manage the room and manage the process and bring it out from people made me far more confident in doing it because I could watch how it works together.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, seeing it in action.
Seeing it in action.
Yeah, yeah.
And then and if you have the kind of participant who role plays in their head, it's a lot easier to do that if you have seen it happen.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, and there's the whole idea of consent, right? Like we're creating an environment where it is consensual. Everyone, it's the stage is set
Mhm.
for the processing to occur versus I'm going to process you without your consent, which sometimes occurs in certain windows because there are certain things that are assumed. And in this, I guess that's what I meant by the permission place, and what you were elaborating on, both Hildy and Susan, is it's that place of we're here, we're on the journey with you. If you're having a bad day, that's okay. I have bad days too, and we're here to be part of the ebb and flow of that learning process.
I'm making assumptions about consent and permission that I'm not sure are your intent
Yeah, I was
in
gonna
saying
ask.
it.
Yes, Isaac, can you tell us more about what you mean by that?
I have what I scribbled down.
Yeah. So, and you know, maybe I'm getting the words, the semantics become too loaded. I don't know. So I've had experiences where before this was labeled catalytic listening, or before it was labeled catalytic thinking, where I'll just use listening buckets as an example because that's what we called it. That's what we learned it as. And there was this tendency for people to get so excited about the buckets and about, oh my gosh, this could like turn everything around. And what they would dive in without having the groundwork laid ahead of time so that people were feeling bombarded or like they were being processed without their consent. And so I'm aware that what I'm hearing, because and I wasn't part of the beta, I wasn't part of the 101. I wish I had been, but surgery did not allow, and everything's perfect, and it just is what it is. So, because one of the questions that's on the table, because I have a number of people up here who are excited about all of this, who want to get and dive in, and they're like, well, can I take the 102 without having taken the 101? And there's that question that's hanging, and I'm like, don't know the answer. Don't know if anybody else knows the answer either. And there's sort of like a groundwork that's been laid with the 101s before they're coming into the 102 that just automatically, I don't know if it's automatically is the word, but there's just this sense of the tone has been set.
Right.
And it's like, it's not like rules. It's not like boundaries. It's not like hard and it's just, all I can think about is its tone. Right? There's a gentleness to it and an understanding and a growth and a perspective that has come about that now goes, it's okay.
Yeah.
We're okay. We're in safe space here.
The answer, and I didn't realize that question was out on the table. The answer is 101 is absolutely a prerequisite to everything else.
Okay.
So that's, and for the exact reason that you said, and that it really lays the groundwork for everything.
And I presumed as much, but I'm not going to answer if I don't know the answer.
Yeah. No,
I'm not the person to ask.
That was one thing that we had. The place where I was going is feeling a little bit, was hearing it a little bit differently, which is that what students get from learning catalytic listening is that implied in it is consent and permission of the person being listened to. because that checking back, that constant reflection back, it tells you, and what we are training ourselves to do is to do that gentle asking, listening, reflecting, listening, reflecting, listening, reflecting. And so that's the place where I was going in terms of the permission and consent. That was what I was getting out of it.
I would say yes. I would say yes to that. Yes, and don't have it being limited by whatever lens I was sort of trying to express through. Please, Dimitri, you were going to say something?
No, when I was in listening to Hildy, as she was describing it as a circle, what she wasn't saying was the questions. So, and the reflection has questions in it. And so and I think it's really important to understand that otherwise it's catalytic hearing as opposed to catalytic listening.
Mm-hmm.
I can apply the listening buckets. I can apply those to any circumstance where I'm hearing something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, apply it from the perspective of, I hear this, I believe this is what they are really saying, or this is what their strengths are, or this is what their best, whatever. But unless I reflect back to them, and which becomes a question, I don't really know.
The thing that stuck out for me, I'm so fried, in our conversation last time was Justin talking about the power of simply saying, it sounds like what you're trying to accomplish is this, am I right? Or am I close? Or is that right? And that he's had it occur more than once where the person he was asking that to was using it as a point of their own reflection of, that's what I said, but am I really thinking that? Am I really? So the power of the asking piece within the reflection. Right. So it's not just asking a question and say, tell me what's going on, tell me, reframing it, because the reframe is such a big piece of the reflection. Mm-hmm. Reframing it, reflecting it back with the question, am I close? Is that right? That question alone is a question.
It makes it scientific.
Oh, does it?
It does. It allows you to get results back that aren't hypotheses.
Test your hypothesis.
Yeah, it isn't just a hypothesis.
Yeah.
It is.
What you thinking, Susan?
I'm thinking that implied in all of this is that the person that you're speaking with, the person that you're questioning and reflecting back to, has stepped into that circle willingly. And that may be part of the curriculum, how to recognize whether somebody is going to be in that circle willingly.
Nice.
Because there are times when you'll ask a question and they're not ready for the kinds of questions we want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Or we need to change what questions we ask, or we need to just be there with them until they are ready to have a conversation.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
So maybe it's permission in a really big way, Trey. I mean, in a really broad sense.
Right. And going back to the question that Hildy asked, that what conditions will make it possible for our participants to be comfortable, to feel like they can accomplish this, is having some conversation or some background on, we're asking your permission and we're asking you to step into this circle.
And I think what that takes is, I think the stories piece is so important, that this is not a formula. This is what you'll always do. That, right. And that's that whole thing, Trey, that you were talking about, of people feeling like something was being done to them. That this is how we're interacting with people, which requires listening before we open our mouths.
It sounds like we're integrating a continuum of readiness.
Yeah.
Explicitly, as I'm sure
And, yeah.
already was implicit, but now if we're making it explicit, that they have to be ready for the conversation.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that by virtue of the fact that someone has signed up for the class, you know, they have given you a certain permission just by virtue of that. I mean, you know,
The thing though is that where I'm getting what Susan was talking about, what Trey was talking about, is there's three people involved here. There's the instructors and us developing the curriculum. There's the students in the class and the people that they have in their world to whom they will be listening.
Okay.
And it is that interaction there that somebody could be, you know, that whole example of my mother taking it 2 years for my mother to finally, us to find the place where she was ready to have the conversation. And that was the difference between my doing it with her versus doing it to her. There's a big piece in my mind about stories in that, and examples that this isn't magic fairy dust. And Joyce posted this beautiful post in her cohort, talking about using what she had learned so far and practicing with her mother and her relationship with her mother. And she ended it with that it feels good to know that this is not magic fairy dust. That you know, that because we are so often promised the magic fairy dust.
Mm-hmm.
And magic fairy dust doesn't work because there's no such thing. And so just the knowledge of our students that, oh yeah, this isn't going to work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That this is about how we be, and the we is both of us. So it's not just how you be, because I'm doing it to you and you're not responding right, but how we be.
Well, and historically, and we talked about this tons every single year since I've been involved with you guys, is the tendency for people to look for the tool. They want the tool, then they want to apply the tool and get the result from the tool. When the tool is such a small piece of the equation, it's the how you are the implementing. So I get that people will have gone through the 101. I completely 100% endorse that. Even though I haven't been part of the 101, I've seen enough of it to go, yeah, absolutely. And there's still that conditioning. We need to be aware that conditioning still exists. So when we step into this place of the catalytic listening and we're starting to show them pieces or demonstrate more accurately certain kinds of pieces that they can in turn start working with, that they're also keeping in mind that the people that they're working with, being with, engaging with, maybe haven't come through the 101, right? So there's this whole evolution and just an awareness of it, not to be afraid of it, not to be concerned about it, but just that whole, I don't know what the words are, I'm losing them at the moment, but.
That becomes a part of the curriculum, is reminding the participants of that, and for us to stay aware that participants may have lost some of that, or some of that they'll need to be reminded also that it's not a tool. They've been through it.
One of the ongoing reminders then needs to be for instructors to give to students, and instructors remembering it every time they say it, and students remembering it every time they hear it, is this is not the way, this is a way, and you're going to have questions that will resonate for you. Here's some questions that have resonated for me. No, Rebecca's found different questions that resonate for her. No, Trey's found different questions. That what we're listening for is the common theme, that we're finding ways to reframe, but that a question that makes sense to me doesn't make sense to you. It's not the way, it's a way. What are ways you've found to practice? And I think that that's really important in dispelling the magic fairy dust thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I love that.
It also sounds as if it would be useful to do some modeling in the class of dealing with people who are definitely not part of the potential students, your family, your kids, what
Yeah. One of the things that was
how to deal with that. I'd like to get through to my husband on things he's not listening to. And he has a habit of walking out of the room. If it's something he doesn't want to talk about, he's just not there. It wouldn't matter what I ask, because he'd be in another part of the house.
It has been so, and it's one of the things that you guys who have taken immersion will love, is that the practice during the 101, and I can see it being entirely the same in the 102 and so on, it was all in wherever people were with whatever they wanted to practice with, and it was with kids, it was with family, it was with I'm stepping into a new place with a client, and I'm thinking about their values. It was about work. It was, because very intentionally, this is no longer about people in a particular industry, in a particular type of work. And one of the things that we found was, and it's why, Susan, your class was the last class where it was, quote, consultants. Because our tendency when we're all of the same doing in life is to go to the doing place. Mm-hmm. So this is what I do with clients. So this is what, so the whole consulting thing was how you do consulting. And when you take away that common thread, and the only common thread is that we're all human beings, then it more naturally lets us go to the being and thinking place. Because it takes the what I do for a living out of it. And I can apply this thinking to what I do here, but oh, you just applied that with your mother. And you just applied that with your coworker.
Even though I've been in all these discussions and read everything you post, I still feel like I don't know the flow of the curriculum, what was covered week to week. I know, Dimitri, you tried to run a session in December to give people that outline, and I couldn't make the time. Is that something we might be able to do again?
The video is available of it.
Okay.
There is a and we need to post. I'm writing it in red on my page.
If you could post that on the faculty page.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
The faculty group. You see, the faculty group is 2 weeks old, and the video.
Wait, did I get invited to the faculty group? I'm trying to remember.
You did. It's where you saw the event posted and linked here.
No, she didn't see it because I saw her email.
No.
Yes,
I went into my events, not into the faculty group.
The only way you'd get invited to this event is if you are part of the faculty group.
Right. That doesn't mean that I can find it again. So
well,
we understand only too well.
I'm gonna do the link right now, so that we're all.
There it is. Found it.
Found it with the superheroes.
Yeah. What happened is the my Facebook sidebar didn't list it, even though it lists.
Mine doesn't either.
It lists the fellows, but I have to go into all the groups.
Well, and what you're able to do is if you hover over any of the groups, there a little settings bar will come, and you can say add to my favorites.
Aha, got it.
And you can also reorder where it lies with your favorites.
Awesome, got it.
Facebook 101 today.
Did not know that, but yay.
I know, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Way more about
Otherwise, what comes up on top is the ones where there's the most frequent posting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
So what we'll do is we'll post to the faculty group the video of the 101 walkthrough. as well as the link to, there is a faculty resource page that,
Awesome.
that we're going to be constantly adding things to, which has a lot of the lesson plans and pieces parts, and which I think will make it easier for for all of us to have central repositories.
I was thinking how in the 101 and for all future ones, it was a big shift that it was no longer about consultants, like Hildy said. Like, people were stepping into there as their whole person. So right away, the practice was naturally happening with my stepson, with my child's teacher, how I'm going to have a different conversation at the dinner table. So it wasn't like people were thinking, I have to, prepare for the, sure, there were ones that came from the work world, I guess you could say, but it naturally was universal in, I'm going to go practice this every place I go. And then I think it's being so explicit on here's what's going on, like the pause button was being continually hit in class. Like, we were constantly deconstructing things, talking about how we were feeling and why we were feeling. And when people were sharing stories of what I was practicing this past week, everything was then deconstructed and celebrated to then move, build on that strength of other people seeing how this could apply in my life as well. Like, well, wait, now tell me how did that happen? And not from that process, but more from the thinking. Like, this is how I prepared for that meeting, and this is how I took the time to have a phone call with that person before the meeting. And I think then also really talking about don't go memorize language and steps. So everyone was continually sharing the language that was working for them, and what seemed to really stick with them. And I think with the catalytic listening is that opportunity to really look in yourself. Like, the practice can also go on in your headspace about whatever it is you're working on in life. And if you're just doing a rage in your head, how we all can sit there with catalytic listening and think, what are the strengths, what are the outcomes, and what are the values I hear from myself, even when I sound like I'm mired in crap right now. So, so it's that self-listening that we're all going to be, that we all do all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like what Dimitri commented about earlier, which has stuck with me for years, is the whole idea of, here's what I'm hearing, and here's what I'm really listening for, which are the two entirely different things, but they can happen. One is literal, the other is almost subtext. Mm-hmm. And what's the most life affirming place that you can come from or be in, and how can you be there with the most authenticity and the most strength and the most compassion and awareness and all those pieces. So relative to what participants need to know, feel, believe, or be assured of, then what I'm hearing is that just as instructors, an awareness of it with the understanding that the people have gone through the 101, that they have that sort of that foundation, that not even foundation, maybe just cornerstone, but still at least it's a significant cornerstone that otherwise would not.
It will be familiar. Hearing many of these phrases will be very familiar to them. Mm-hmm. And I think that part of what I'm reflecting on right now is what they will need to, what will help assure them is they'll be hearing familiar phrases, familiar language, to understand that this is all part of one framework around bringing out the best in each other. And this is not a widget that you use to do to somebody, but this is all a continuation of what you learned in that first class, which is all how we be with each other in a way that brings out the best in each other.
I think that's key, Hildy, is that continuation piece. And it's not that we're thinking that, this isn't about putting someone down, that thinking that they're not going to get that, but you were saying, Susan, it's just a reminder. It's a touching base. It's been a while since we've had this conversation. So just a reminder, this is a continuation of where we left off, right?
I would almost say it's not a continuation as
Okay.
much as a building on.
Building on.
Because continuation is like you're going from one place to a different place,
Mm-hmm.
but you're building on almost a palimpsest or a tapestry of all these things weaving together to create a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also reminded that people need to continue to practice. And so if built into 102 are times to practice what we learned in 101 at the same time, so that there's that recognition that this is a tapestry, or you're building things one on top of each other so that they create a whole.
Well, and what I'm loving about that is the ability to reflect back and remind that sometimes just the words, like we said for 2 months when you took the 101.
Or
I think Susan needs to weave us a tapestry.
Like you
I am probably the least crafty person I have ever met.
Not to believe it. It all depends on how we define things.
But
Well,
crafty-
and what you were saying earlier was about making things explicit, right?
Yeah.
That's what a lot of what you were doing in the 101 was, you were making explicit what you were doing. So it would be the same process in the 102, drawing in elements from the 101 as you're weaving in the 102 elements.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In 101 and here in 102 as well, it was wonderful to hear from participants that the explicit nature of everything is they then were being explicit to other people and saying, here's why you're feeling really good in this conversation with me. Because the whole intention is that we replicate and scale this way of thinking everywhere. So they felt very comfortable telling someone why it feels so good to share our meandering journey of life, because that's not the systems we've grown up in. It's, got to get to the doing. So, even inviting someone, hey, I'd like to, can we put the agenda aside and take the time? But they're able to deconstruct it to those people that are out in the world, because it's that clear, that practical, and that doable to them to model it and deconstruct it real time.
Nice. Okay.
So for students to feel comfortable to share that explicitness in their own conversations, what do they need to have? What do they need to feel? What do they need to be? What are the conditions for that?
First thing I thought was cheat sheet.
What was it?
A cheat sheet.
You mean like the ones that we all have around our room, pasted in front of us?
Little Post-it notes I have hanging out. Yeah.
Oh, one of the coolest things that happened last week is when Justin posted a picture of what it looked like for him.
Yes.
His office with the 3 computer screens and these large poster boards in front of his desk facing him that actually have questions on them. So that he can always just look up, that's the one I need to say right now.
You guys want to see something funny?
Oh my gosh.
I'm just going to show you something funny.
You too, huh?
Can you guys see that? Okay. Yeah, like seriously.
Yeah, and I've got
Right?
a bunch of questions stuck to my window in front of me also.
How powerful that is during class to swivel around like Trey just did and show participants in the class, hey, this is what my space looks like.
Right.
I put the things that really are great reminders and prompts to me right where I can see it.
Yep.
If that
And that's
doesn't
part of
say
what makes-
practice not a perfect.
Yeah.
And that's part of what will make them more comfortable in being explicit, because we're being explicit of how we do this, how we make this work for us.
Part of what was really interesting,
And a cheat sheet.
Yeah, well, seriously, you know, a part of what was, and a couple of things, or part of what was powerful in our being explicit and doing the, okay, here's what you just experienced, was the ability to say, the ahas that you're feeling right now with us being explicit, that's what you can create for other people. And
I love it.
if
Yeah.
you are timid about asking a new question to somebody because you're in a group and you're leading from the middle, then you can say, you know, I just took this class and I'd really like to try something. I mean, you don't have to, you know, you don't have to act like you know what the hell you're doing. You can act like like who you are. You can be honest about it. You can say, I'd like to try this. I'd like to play with this. And there's talk about permission. The permission to not have to feel like you have to be an expert. Yeah.
You know, one of the most, for me, and I know that it's fairly common, one of the most powerful ways to learn is to teach. So if I'm taking a chemistry class and I want to learn the subject matter, if I can try to explain it to somebody else, that makes it sink in to me because I'm trying to teach somebody else. The very fact that you are explicit, you are learning it better yourself by virtue of doing that to others. So as an instructor, it teaches you by virtue of teaching others. And it gives them the role model to, with that great statement. Do you want to have the same ahas that you know, when you're with other people, this is how you get those. This is the direction you go. So it's really...
And Dimitri, that I think that what you just said could explicitly be said to participants, that teaching is the best way to solidify your learning. And so by doing that, you will become more confident in asking the questions because you are teaching others.
So I have to share with you guys, Susan and Jocelyn and me and Justin via video, because he was afraid to leave his family in the middle of the snowstorm.
Yeah.
We're in a room with two people who had watched a couple videos, read some stuff about catalytic thinking, thought it was really, really cool enough to pay all of our expenses to be in that room together. The joy of watching for the first, I don't know, half hour, Susan and Jocelyn and Justin, not me, Susan and Jocelyn and Justin telling these two people what the power is of catalytic thinking and the difference that it makes, and the examples that you guys were giving. That is a part of learning by teaching. Of just that I've experienced this thing and this is awesome, and so having our participants, our students, be able to say, I've experienced this thing and it's really cool and I want to talk to you. I mean, that is the...
It also helps you put it in your own voice.
Very much.
Because what teaching does is that I paraphrase it. You know, if I explain to somebody else, where if I am simply a spouting rote to someone, you know, this is step one, this is step two, step three, that's very different than saying, well, here's what we're trying to accomplish. And here's how I go about doing it. Here's a way that you can do it. It's real different because it's now in your own voice.
And the language is theirs, not, and I think that that's part of what we need to be really explicit about.
Yep.
That this is not about saying what the teachers said in the way the teachers said it. This is about finding your language in a way that works in your scenario, because where you live and work and be is different than, yeah.
And I think about then participants, really that sense of that you're part of something far larger than yourself. So if you are being explicit to others out in the world, then you are part of the ripples that is creating the future's mission. You know, that we want to bring out the best in people everywhere in the world so that like the stories of amazing are ubiquitous everywhere. So then that participant gets to delight that I am part of this very large, huge ecosystem all around the world that is sharing and rippling out Like, it's not like I have to wait till I finish some class and get a certificate and feel like I have mastered something that I then take out the manual. But I am fueling the future we want to see, however I show up every day in my conversations.
There's a piece there about a condition for their success being ongoing support, and they're feeling like they're not alone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We got your back.
And we're all practicing.
Mhm.
You know, I think I've shared with you guys a million times, but I'll share it again because I'm old and I tell the same stories over and over. One of in the early days, maybe the second or third year that we were doing immersion, one of our fellows was on the listserv at the time when we were just talking about via listserv, saying that that she was gaining in confidence in the practice, but that every time she stood in front of a group to facilitate, she got nervous and she felt scared in the pit of her stomach. And I got on and responded, honey, I've been doing this for 15 years and every single time I get that thing in the pit of my stomach. And she said, okay, knowing that, that's all I need to know. And serious. I mean, so
yeah.
The fact that we're all practitioners and that Trey's got that beautiful array of Post-its with all the questions, I think that there's so much power in that, that we're practicing. One of the things that was awesome that I love, that I think is a big piece of this, was when after the first session, we would come back at the second and the third and the fourth and the et cetera, and we would open with, obviously we'd open with awesomes, but we would then talk about what did you practice between, and we were encouraging via the Facebook group for that cohort in between. They were sharing some things, but what did you practice? And the instructors were part of what did we practice that week. So it wasn't just what did you practice, you are the students, but here's what I practiced and here's what Rebecca practiced, and you know, sharing our own ahas that we're all co-learning.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just, this is a non sequitur, but related, on the power of questions and the power of listening to the person asking the questions. There was a really sad story earlier this week, actually it was at the end of last week, about the Challenger explosion.
Right.
On my birthday 30 years ago. And what the story was that there was an engineer who kept telling him this is what's going to happen. And he kept trying to get the other engineers to listen to him, that if it was so cold. And so he was so distraught the rest of his life that he told them clearly, this is what's going to happen. The seals will fail and it will explode. The seals will fail and it will explode.
I remember that.
Yes.
Right.
I remember that.
And if the temperature goes below 30 degrees, this is what will happen. And he talked to everybody, but the question wasn't what's in the best interest of the astronauts. The question was always what's in the best interest of the space program, what's in the best interest of NASA. We need to have this, you know, we need to show we can turn it around quickly. We can turn the
Okay, so this is very current for me personally. You and I have talked a lot about this, and it is related, and I'm not sure how it fits in or not, but it is the artificial installation of urgency into conversations that Rebecca and I have been talking a lot, because we have been part of several conversations over the past 6 months where people have approached us about doing work with them, and it's like we have to do it now. And the reason we have to do it now is always something that is externally imposed, that comes from a place of scarcity and dependency. And so in order to meet our budget, in order to, this would be a cool grant, this opportunity is only going to be for X number, this thing is happening. And they're fabulous things, but they're so at the if only scale on the continuum.
Yeah.
And so there's a piece here about listening for what's really important, and asking the next question from a place of humanness. And Susan, you and I were in a conversation a week or so ago with a group where you may remember I said it feels like there's an artificial sense of urgency here. It feels like some artificial deadline is being placed, and it opened a conversation to saying, yeah, there's some constraints. There's some things that we need to, and if I guess there's a piece here about listening. You talked before about listening to ourselves, listening to our own discomfort, and being mindful of that and being attentive to that as instructors. And I know probably a part of this is what needs to be in place for us as instructors, but I think you're also instructing students to be really mindful of when something doesn't feel right, asking ourselves, what is that about? Or being comfortable enough to say, I'm not fully understanding, can you tell me more?
Which is what you did.
Yeah.
In that conversation.
Yeah. And so I think that there's a piece there that instead of where we normally go, which is either to agree, yeah, this is really urgent, this is really cool, or just the opposite of that of, are you stupid or what the hell's going? Something's not. I'm not getting it. I'm not. And so giving that prompt to be mindful of our own as the listener.
So I think that fits into curriculum of things that we have to be mindful of ourselves and be able to let the participants be aware of when they're practicing as well.
There's a huge level here. Oh, wow. There's a huge condition for success for them around self-awareness and self-noticing.
Yeah. To know where they themselves are and why are they taking this class?
Yeah, exactly.
They have to be aware of why they're taking this class and understand where they are in coming to it.
And they'll be at a different stage of readiness to use it in a work setting, perhaps, than in a family setting. They're to be very mindful about their comfort level in different situations.
And Hilda, you use the example of people who are at the point of being able to read an article, take a $9.99 flash class, a $49.99 3-hour class, and diving in and doing $3,000 for travel to Tucson for 7 days. And the people who are in these beta classes are all at different stages also. They may be more closely aligned than the person who's at the $9.99 versus the $3,000, but they're still at different places.
Very much so. Very much so.
And because that's very much been conversation for us over here, sort of back and forth, is that where can we come from the place of the most ease? Where can we come from the place of working with what information we have, with the understanding that we're making space for whatever can come next? And it's literally whatever can come next, without preconceptions of what that's going to look like. And we've sort of found a rhythm that works for us, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we know what the next step is.
Yeah.
So I don't want to speak cryptically. Let's see if I can give more of an example. Scheduling. Every single one of us are self-employed. Every single one of us have clients. We have, if we're going to try and get together, it's almost like we've got to schedule it like a month in advance kind of thing.
Mhm.
But then once we get into the rhythm, then we get into the rhythm. So
Mhm.
what we do is we just go, okay, let's throw out a when is good, and let's figure out when we have open space and open time, with the understanding that those common spaces of open time are there for us. Sometimes we might use them, sometimes we might not use them. Sometimes we don't even know what we're going to use them for. But at least we're creating a space for something to happen, if it is going to happen, whenever it's going to happen. And it's been really interesting sort of sometimes when we're engaging with people who sort of haven't been playing there, and how much, yes, Hildy, they are making it about the external. They are making it about some sort of an external condition. And it's almost like they need that to give themselves the motivation, or to give themselves the permission, or to give whatever label you want to put on it, to sort of to move from thought to action. And it's just a really lovely place to be, to just sort of go, we're going to make space for it, and if it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, it doesn't, and it's going to happen again, because everything's cyclical and everything comes around. And
Well,
yeah,
it reminds me of some of the difference between people who are comfortable being self-employed and having a patchwork calendar that that has spaces you're holding for what might happen, versus these are spaces that are going to happen every week. And those for whom they're much more comfortable being in that certainty space of, I know where I'm going to be at 8:30 every Monday through Friday. I'm going to be there until 5:30. And there's different, I think it's part of a personality thing as well, a temperament, where you're comfortable.
Rebecca,
And so if we're going to tie that back into what participants need to know or feel or believe or be assured of,
how do we make that?
I just lost it, but I was going there, and now it just kind of flew out.
I'm sorry.
It's going to have to come
Sorry about that. I'm sorry.
No. You're great. You're great. I'm aware that sometimes I can bunny trail, and I want to.
I'll bring you back, baby. Don't worry. I'm
just trying to keep us on point here a little bit.
Not used to your bunny trails by now, darling. And yeah, Rebecca has.
I use rabbit holes.
Yeah.
I go down the rabbit hole.
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
But just in our being and how we show up, there's something to be said to create and hold the space and not have an agenda. Because oftentimes I'm bringing these people together because I want to just get my megaphone out and sell you on my idea. And then perhaps I'm going to get your buy-in. I'm convinced enough of you that this is a really good idea. Or then we'll brainstorm, and then everyone will get pissed at each other. So there's something very different between that and what does it look like to create and hold a welcoming space, and to have, again, building, like Susan said, it's the building on what we've done in 101 with everyone together, to then go into 102 to hold that space, not with an agenda of I'm going to fix you. And with the whole listening, it's what happens if your college roommate calls you tomorrow and is wanting advice. How can we play in that space where you are providing value and not feeling like, well, I didn't help that person, but I've held that space and using my catalytic listening. So I think it's putting your agenda and your megaphone like no longer exist, and having the comfort and confidence that I trust this process and I trust whomever is in the room with me. So again, it trues back to what we talk about in 101, which continues to be the through line through all of the classes.
What would it take for someone to believe, before I form the question, let me tell you what my example is, and then we can form the question around it. Yeah. I've seen what happens when we give advice. And I know cognitively that it is not as effective, and it actually brings out the worst in people rather than bringing out the best in people. And so I don't want to give you advice, but and I don't want to be in a place of problem solving, but because deep in my heart, I believe that I do know what's best for you. And so there's the leap of faith from, I get this cognitively, and I'm understanding it from the brain science and from the behavioral part of it. But how do I make that leap inside my own head that says, just shut up?
So when did you read my mind?
Can we? I'm not sure how we can have buttons that we can read. Only we can read when they put them on us.
but so I guess what are the conditions that can help students move from I get this cognitively to a belief that it is the more effective. Let me put this in really negative terms, because I think that this is such a dangerous cultural thing that we've learned to do. What would it take for students to deeply understand that when they give advice, that they're doing harm to their relationship with that person, and that they are discounting that person and bringing out the worst in that person? So what does it take for our students to believe in their core and experience maybe that their habitual way of telling people, in essence, I value you and all of that stuff, but here's what you should do, that's doing harm?
To be on the receiving end.
Yeah, I think that I think exactly what Rebecca said, being on the receiving end. So I think much as we want to keep our reflections positive, it might be helpful to reflect back on times when it was done to them.
And even in a practice session in the class, having each person come forward with something and feel well, have you tried this? Or I think you should do that, or da. And real time, how is that making each person who's in that receiving end feel?
Yeah.
I went through last week's session yesterday for the part that I wasn't in, and I don't remember where this quote came from, but when we give people advice, we rob them of their journey.
Troy.
Okay. So I think that should be a mantra. I wrote it down for myself.
That's a post-it note I should have on my computer.
That's going to be a post-it note, yeah.
Yeah. And what is
And
it?
every mother should have that.
And what does it mean in real time? What does it look like when we are robbing someone of their journey? What is their reaction? What are their facial expressions? How do we know that, yeah, but I know what's best for them, is causing pain, is causing harm to the relationship? Yes,
Okay.
the brain.
Like Rebecca said, we can do that as part of the curriculum. Reflect on how they feel after that wrong way conversation, and then do it over again and reflect again on how differently you feel.
And I would love to add on to what Jane just said. We're recording them. Do an instant replay. No, those aren't recorded. Not even for okay. Because I was going to say, if it was, you do an instant replay and look at your face.
Well, you might be able to, with an iPad or something, record it delete it right after.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
The purpose for not recording is safe space.
Safe space. Safe space. Yep.
So surreptitiously recording is even less safe space.
Well, no, I wasn't suggesting surreptitious.
Or tell everybody else in the class, watch that person's face while this is happening.
Yeah, that we can do.
Because they're in the mosaic.
Practice.
It's practice.
No, it's something they practice.
They have to practice. Yeah, that's right.
No, that they practice doing it bad and seeing what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
So?
Give advice. Give advice. Give
Oh,
advice.
practice giving advice.
Practice giving advice. And
I mean,
watching-
I'm just sort of throwing
that-
out there.
The thing that is striking me, and this is very personal, because I do that all the time. I am getting better at not doing it, but my reflex is to, you know what you should do.
Yeah.
And I believe I'm doing it with love and compassion, and I really care about this person and whatever. I cognitively know what its impact is. It's still very hard. I mean, I have to admit, it's still very hard to not do it. And I'm really, as I think about this, I'm wondering if it's almost like how someone who is prone to anger deals with it. Before you respond, count to 10. Or, before you give advice, give yourself the mental break. And I'm really wondering if that might
I was thinking about electric shock, so yours is probably better.
Or you...
I think what Dimitri's saying is we've become expert at rationalizing why this situation
Yes.
is different.
Yes.
And I did it yesterday. At least I asked a few upfront questions that were appropriate, but the person's saying, I've got an interview tomorrow for a board and I want to know what questions to ask. Just tell me what questions to ask.
Well, and there's a belief system and a way of thinking that permeates that whole piece.
Yeah.
And it's like the old conversation about, are you a coach or are you a consultant? Are you educating or are you teaching? Are you, and to a degree, I still get that as a coach, particularly working with small business owners, is there's a part of them that wants you to tell them what to do. And yet you tell them what to do because that's what they say they want. And it just completely goes nowhere. And because it's scary. It can be scary to take responsibility for yourself, for your environment. And so there's this thought that, well, if someone else will just tell me what to do,
Yes.
I'll be okay. And yet that nobody wants to be told anything. They want to be heard. And so speaking accountably, I just really love this conversation because it just proves that we've all done it. We've all been there. We've all, and we're still learning and we're still getting it. And sometimes we don't, and that's all okay.
Yeah. Rebecca mentioned last time, and I will share it with you guys again, but it's in the current immersion workbook, if you've got that anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the article that I wrote that maybe one day I'll actually just polish up and put on the blog.
The dance?
About the dance of advice.
The dance.
And the, did we just freeze up?
We got you.
We got you.
We're back, okay. And the power of recognizing that when people ask for advice, there's like one of three things they really want, and none of them are advice.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is that they want you to just do it for them. Would you please, what should I do? Would you like me to just handle that, honey? Part of it is they want to just be heard. They just want to vent. And sometimes what they want is for us to confirm that what they're thinking is correct. But none of those are asking for what we really would do, because that's really, really rare. I mean, sometimes they really, really want that, and it's really not often. Maybe part of it is that recognition. I think part of it is what they need is a deep dive into the explicit part about advice. What we've done in the past in immersion is I would demonstrate catalytic listening by asking somebody to be a guinea pig about something that's going on in their lives, and I ask a bunch of questions, and I reflect back their strengths, I reflect back their outcomes, I reflect back their values. They feel really good. I ask, is this, does that sound right? Yeah, it does. How are you feeling about it? Great. I just have a few more questions, and then I go into advice mode. And I do it for a very, very short time because it's painful to do, and it's painful to watch their receiving of it. And you watch them shrivel, and you watch their body language. Sometimes it's worse than others. And then I stop and I say, "Did you guys all see that?" And so they've experienced it. And I talk about the fact that we all do this, and we all do this with the best of intentions. And then we go into practicing what good looks like. I think what needs to happen here, because this gives us that beautiful amount of time, rather than 2 hours on day one of immersion and then go into the next thing, we have many sessions where we can really be explicit about and talk about in very deep terms what is going on with advice, and we can create real meaningful curriculum about this, real meaningful content that begins this session with really deep explicitness.
So I've got a couple of reflections on that. It reminded me that when we're talking about being really explicit about it and why it works and why it's necessary, there are people like myself and a few people that I know for whom knowing the science behind it is important.
Yes.
That we go from the brain to the mental knowing, then trying it, and then saying this is why it works, etc. So we're really into that part. But the other part has been taught in the back of my head through the whole thing about curriculum and teaching and all of that is we're telling people what not to do. And we're giving them advice.
Believe me.
So reconciling when is it appropriate to be telling people techniques, how to do things, instead of when are we pulling it out of them? Because there are people who may not have the experiences and the knowledge and the learning about different things. And I'm not trying to justify giving people advice. That's not where I'm going here. I'm saying, how do we reconcile within ourselves the fact that we are telling people things?
Part of where I have gone, and this is sort of yes, Jane. Do you need?
I have a delivery coming early. Sorry, I've got
Okay.
sofa arriving in.
Good to see you, Jane.
So sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. This has been a subtle learning in myself how to teach this. Because I've gone through that exact conundrum, Susan, of, am I giving you advice to tell you not to give advice? Is that I don't teach, don't give advice. I teach what happens when we do. I let you decide if you want to keep doing it, that's just fine. But what I think is important to talk about is to step back and see reality without the story that we're telling ourselves about reality. And the story we're telling ourselves is, I see the impact of this on you, but I'm going to do it anyway because I know best. And so the piece I think that's really important for us is to walk that line of encouraging, as you said, pulling out of them. What happens when you get when people advise you? What did you just see when we did this exercise with Mary? What did you just see? Have you experienced that before? What does that look like? So I think that there's a lot of their experiencing it and are talking about it, rather than it being the teaching of don't give advice, but what is more effective? These are ways that we have found that bring out the best in other people, rather than a thou shalt not. And I think that as we're designing this, that keeping what you just said in mind is really, really important for instructors to be able to self-monitor and walk that talk, because it's huge. What you just brought out is just tremendous. Another point that I'm really glad we're recording this. Another point, because I'm not writing, my brain's not connecting everything. Another point that I think is important for us as instructors to talk about the what happens when is what happens when the situation you spoke of earlier happens, that somebody in the class is giving advice and we're watching everybody else go like this. You know what I've done when that happens? And you watch the body language change, you watch the so somebody talks about in practice a situation that they're encountering, and somebody's immediate response is, you know what I've done when that happens, or you know what I've experienced, you know what, and as instructors and facilitators, what do we want to do to create the conditions where that helps that person see what they're doing? So such a big part of this is the noticing, in a way that is gentle and kind and compassionate, and helps that be an object lesson without it being you're an asshole.
Because it's coming from a place of wanting to help.
And so that again is the how do we not step in as instructors when our first response, because we're going to see it and notice it because we're attuned to it, is no, stop doing that. So such a part of
the Dr. Phil response.
How's
that working for you?
It's exactly. But so there's two places where what you bring up is going to be really important to us as instructors in this. One is going to be when we're teaching it in the first place, the explicit part, the stuff that we can control very easily because we're going to be the ones talking. But the other part is what we do when our natural humanness kicks in, when we see somebody doing it right in front of our eyes in the class, and are having as instructors practiced responses, so that we're responding from a place that's consistent with what we're teaching, so that we can then be explicit about that. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So that goes into your list of what do the instructors need?
Right. What does the content need to be? I mean, if these are the conditions we want to create, then we're going to be developing content off of these conditions. Is okay. What are we going to teach? How are we going to teach it?
But content, but also for the instructors to have, when you see this in the midst of the class, so we don't have to be thinking on the fly, oh my God, now what do I say?
Because to know that this is going to happen. This is going to happen. Yeah.
And it might just be me. And then whoever my co-instructor is going to say, Susan.
Well, and I will share with you, having co-instructors is awesome.
Oh, I can't. I'm really very glad about that.
Part of the reason for that is, and I did find this save during one of, probably more than one of the sessions, is to say, now you see what Joe just did, my co-instructor? That is the perfect example. And Joe, you are so brilliant at it, of what not to do and what we do when we think we're, so it was just this amazing way to step in and say, does he rock? Okay, how many of you have done that? To do the quick save of Joe, so that, but we can't really do that with students. We can do it with each other, but.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can do it with each other. Yeah.
So is there a way, and I'm thinking out loud because I'm just trying to sort of relay my experiences of the last, say, 5 years. and because what we've done in the past as sort of the preamble or the beginning of group processes is we've gone, okay, shit's going to happen. Okay, it's just a given. We're all human. Let's just sort of put that on the table right now. What are we as a group mutually agreeing to cue each other and co-create those cues?
I like that a lot.
Because that's what helps them feel an ownership of it. It's not, then it doesn't feel like a top down. Then it doesn't feel like a, one finger pointing and three fingers pointing back. It's coming from this place of mutual co-creation of what are we as gently and as compassionately going to say.
I love that.
Other with each other. Yeah.
I love that, Trey. That's beautiful, because when Hildy was teaching the immersion at the very beginning is there may be a time when somebody's going to cry. There's maybe a time when somebody's going to be bursting into other people's groups. How are we going to handle this? And as a group, we work that out.
Okay, so what the two of us have been mumbling about on the side here is that during the first day's session, which we see being the same in every class, it's going to be getting to know each other. It's going to be establishing how we be with each other. And in the 101, it's very generic because the question is, because the topic is bringing out the best in each other. The question after they get to know each other is, what would it take for us to make sure we're bringing out the best in each other during our time together? And then we have the ability to explicitly pull back the curtain. And I want to be really mindful of time here because we're a little bit.
I have to leave in a minute or two.
But we explicitly pull back the curtain and say, how many of us do group process where we ask about ground rules? We've just established ground rules without having to call them ground rules. We've done this via what brings out the best in each other. What the two of us were mumbling back here was the ability to be very explicit with very specific questions in that conversation when we have it again, because we know we're going to have it. What will bring out the best in each other? We're going to be practicing some things that go counter to what we normally do and what we are habitually doing. What will it take for us to bring out the best in each other in reminding each other and blah, 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 blah. But yeah. If
Love it.
The bingo on no, sorry, wrong finger.
I think
Didn't bother me in the least.
with the explicit language and deconstruction is also explicitly
Love it.
constructing current systems. Like, and here's what's going on in the world all the time. For example, we are called as experts. We are called as consultants to fix something. And and I know that our class will be people of all kinds. No matter what your role is in the universe, you are called as the expert to fix something in your life regularly. So acknowledging where does that put you in a place of, oh my God, if I don't fix it, or I must have all the answers, and that means I'm in my little silo of scarcity and I have to figure it all out by myself. So even deconstructing the systems we've all been living in since we came onto this earth, and then moving into the good systems.
Yeah.
I think Susie.
So, my friends, I have to leave. I have to be someplace in 25 minutes.
Okay, your reflection, because we're going to close down like now.
Well, like this was the fastest 2 hours I've been in a long time, except maybe for last week. And I'm getting really excited about this. And it's so nice to know, Dimitri, that I'm not the only one that it's so easy to slide into the advice giving, especially to my daughter.
It is the hardest with family. That is, with my kids, it is just painfully hard to not do it. I mean, I'll be on the phone with my kids and I'm looking, and she's looking at me like, you're going to give them advice. I know you're going to give them advice.
Generally, I slip him a piece of paper that says, ask a question. I don't even care what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So I got to go. So thank you so much.
thank
See
you.
yous. See yous.
Trey, what is standing out to you?
Anticipation.
For-
Just feeling, just love being part of the conversation and enjoying it, and I like being in conversations where sometimes I don't know what I'm going to say next, and I just kind of going to ride with it, and being with other people who are doing the same is always fun. So that's what's resonating for me right now, is just being in literally the being in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys?
Just the reminder of this, that it is a practice that we absolutely have to practice all the time. You know, this conversation went so many different places that, you know, I can reflect on many of them, but the main thing is that it is a practice, and it's a practice to listen probably more than anything else.
It's catalytic listening.
Wow, what a catchy title.
And you, my dear?
I'm reflecting on how grateful I am with Trey and Susan and Jane and other people, like in this, you know, curriculum and faculty development are all one and the same. So we're in a living lab right now. So it's awesome because we're preparing to teach while we're creating what we teach by using the framework, which we all know, but it's a sense of strength every single time we're in here. You're not ever faltering in the exploration. So.
With no experts. I mean, and I mean that in the best possible.
With no experts and all experts.
Right. With no one telling you, giving you advice. No one is saying this is the way you're going to do it. It is, let's all develop this together with respect for everyone and their insights. Yeah. Because that's really what we're tapping into, is people's insights.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that's standing out for me the most, and I'm remembering this feeling when we were developing the first class, is that this feels to me very much like it felt when we were, Trey, in that very, very, very first session where you guys were pulling this all out of my head. That what is happening here is breaking down everything that I have been teaching for the past 6-7 years, and pulling the why out of it so that we can make the why and the thinking so much more explicit, so much more meaningful, so much more, that all of the pieces, and then building on it and going, okay, yeah, that thing that we only had time.
The how's not up to you.
And the building on it, that thing that we only had an hour on day one of immersion, that we now have 18 hours to dive into, that just think about what that builds. And I hate to say that there's a lot of relief that the building of that no longer relies on me. And the relief is a combination of relief, because that's a huge responsibility, but the sheer joy that it has all of you guys' wisdom now, that it's not just one person's wisdom, that it's everybody's wisdom. This is just, I'm so excited about everything we're talking about here. My head's just exploding because this is awesome. This is awesome. And it's also addressing a lot of things that over the years I've noticed, felt, said, yeah, one of these days we got to figure that out, and moved on. And we all get to build it together. And that feels so good. That feels so good. So
cool.
We will see you next week, I hope.
Yes. I got it. It's sacrosanct. It's in my calendar. So.
All right.
All right, guys. Have tons of fun over there.
We will. Thank you, Trey.
Bye, Trey.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.